We'll move to item 8, the Chief Executive and the Group Chief Financial Officer update. Some good news, Peter and Phil. This is Phil's first report as permanent Chief Executive, so you will notice there's an staggering uplift in performance already.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'll actually be reasonably quick today, where I am aware you've got a quite long agenda, so we've actually contained content today, and I'll probably communicate something a little bit more fully outside of the meeting. But a few things that I did want to cover with you, and then I'll hand over to Peter. Because there's no specific recovery report on the agenda today other than the Category 2P report, I just wanted to make a few points about our progress in that space. Matt did email you on the 16th of November, so just for reference, you have some of that material through another channel. But we've got 2,100 plus properties having opted into the categorisation process, and the work on formalising the categorisation continues, of course. It's important to be aware that the first of the formal advice has gone out to property owners, and that's not just the Category 3 properties, but also some in Category 2 and some at Category 1 who are, life will continue on those properties. I think there's about 200 odd of the Category 1 folk confirmed now. The policy work, and it's been extensive, is largely complete, with the report on your agenda today around Category 2P. So quite a significant body of work in that regard. There have been just under 2,000 infrastructure projects completed in the course of this year since the weather events in January. So that's a staggering accomplishment across the group. Obviously a significant number of those in the transport, water care, healthy waters space and elsewhere on our own parks. We think that there's probably in excess of 3,000 actual jobs to be done, but 2,000 bits of work in the course of this year since January's quite phenomenal. There are good liaison arrangements now in place with 15 residents groups, the affected areas in the city, and the navigation service is well and trained. The office itself is as close to fully staffed as we can expect for where we are at the moment. So the capacity is right there, and we now have a project plan signed up that will take us through to the end of 2024 realistically in terms of the recovery office. Moving on. Just want to talk to liaison with central government because this is front of mind and at the moment in terms of the incoming but yet to form government arrangements. We have continued a range of engagements with central government agencies, the purpose of which is to make sure that in the policy advice that's coming through from those departments to the incoming government, our interests are represented in that advice and through the briefings that they'll be preparing for the incoming government. So there's been quite a bit of activity with agencies around that. I wanted to talk quickly and not in detail though to some changes in the organisation. Clearly we've had an opportunity, I've had an opportunity to talk with the governing body recently about this. So I'm very close to finalising 90 and 100 day work programs. There are a number of dimensions to that. I've been socialising some of that material with the current executive team, with the senior leadership in the organisation, and to a degree with the balance of the organisation. I will share that with you once I've had some input to the finalisation of that. I have signalled some refreshing of senior management roles and structures in the organisation, but I want to be quite clear with you that I'm taking I would say, a very thoughtful and careful approach to that, one that kind of respects the people that we have at the moment and doesn't go so far as to destabilise the organisation, but gets the positive strengthening benefits out of that. We've also started our planning around what I would call the strengthening aspects of some work in the organisation, and I'm talking specifically about the learning and development investment for staff, some career path work, the creation of some graduate and cadet roles using vacancies in the organisation, and some planning around some culture development, customer service disciplines in the organisation and such like. So I'm giving you a very quick sense of some progress in that space, and I will let you know when we've finalised the 90 and 180-day plans exactly what's happening. Very quickly, and Peter will talk to this in more detail, but the organisation is on track with our budget, with the management of staffing levels, with the savings program. We have targets in the current financial year, and we're well on track with those. We're on track with the City Rail Link, both from a budget and a project point of view, and we're on track in terms of our regulatory numbers, consents and such like. In fact, they continue to be pretty healthy, and our income stream from those also continues to be pretty healthy. I want to quickly shout out to the team that's been involved in the food waste rollout. That rollout is largely complete for most of our residential areas, and you know, particular kudos to Parul and her team for the progress in that regard. We have let you know, we have a meeting on the 1st of December with the CCO chief executives, and out of that we will reset the shared services program for the next year. And one aspect of that continues to be around accommodation, and for your awareness, Eke Panuku will be moving into the Albert Street building as part of that program this calendar year, so very shortly. Very finally, I hope this is appropriate, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that it's Todd Niles. He's looking shocked over there. Todd's moving on to greener pastures very shortly. This will be his last meeting with us. I think I'm right in saying, Todd. You know, it's an important relationship that we have with the media. Sometimes not always comfortable, but important nonetheless. And Todd's been, if you like, with us for a long time, and just want to say thank you. Peter.
Thank you, Phil. Just following on from Phil and also your worship, there is some good news, and on track is probably a really good description of where things are heading. Moody's credit rating was affirmed now as well as our second credit rating agency. So both have now affirmed Auckland Council's issuer credit ratings over October and November, both on stable outlook. To paraphrase the rationale for this rating, the rating reflects the Council's well-established local government institutional framework that allows for the flexibility to deliver a strong operating performance. And this comes through adjustments to revenues and spending decisions while ensuring strong governance practices, including adherence to reporting and planning requirements and audit controls. So that's one of the highlights. If we talk to financial performance across the group to 31 October 23, firstly, starting at the group level, capital investment was 93% of the budgeted delivery at $954 million spent. The variance, that was largely due to the timing of spend on capital projects related to flood recovery, and there is more detail, of course, in the monthly dashboard that is included in Nexus. Water care incurred their highest expenditure in the group of $364 million. That's 88% of their budget. And the key capital highlight was returning the Muriwai water treatment plant to service following Cyclone Gabrielle. And while it might not be in the notes, for those who are interested, I understand the Muriwai deli is open from Friday this week. It's going to be a personal highlight for me. Capital expenditure for Auckland Transport of $275 million, that's 85% of planned spend. And the underspend there is largely driven by the renewals and flood recovery work, so we can see that theme coming through. There was also some delay in ferry decarbonisation program, Scott Point land settlement projects and electric train related works, which are all tracking behind plan. Net direct expenses, they were $36 million or 10% favourable to budget, so again another green shoot. This is mainly because of higher than budgeted revenues, and some of the main drivers here were fees and user charges revenue, 19 million over budget, and that's mainly due to building consents, licences and permits revenue having higher processing volumes than budgeted. In addition, Watercare's interconnection growth charges were contributed to other direct revenue being 13 million favourable to budget. Operating grants and subsidies, that was also favourable. That was an unbudgeted $11 million from Waka Kotahi for storm-related costs. Net debt. Net debt decreased by $286 million from the start of the year, and that's mainly due to the proceeds from the partial sale of the group's Auckland Airport shares. There is an offset to that, and that is the group capital investment funding requirements as we continue to invest, and also some non-cash book value movements. So if I split them out, 417 million of the new borrowings were needed to fund group capital projects, and the book value of debt has increased by 130 million. And that's mainly due to the unrealised foreign exchange losses. Focus on unrealised, it's non-cash, it's a accounting entry we have to do, but it doesn't impact on cash. If I go to Auckland Council Parent briefly. The parent's capital expenditure was 6 million above budget, and that's mainly due to parks and community facilities being ahead in the delivery of their local asset renewals program. Net direct expenditure followed the trend of the group and was 28 million favourable to budget, again because of the higher revenues than were planned. In addition, operating grants and subsidies from central government funding for storm recovery work. Direct expenditure was in line with budget. So some comments on the outlook from this, given those trend lines. With CapEx, given the strong start with delivery at this part of the year, the current expectation is for full CapEx delivery this financial year. With respect to revenue, the favourable results to date are forecast to result in direct revenue being above budget for the full year. And under expenditure, we are expecting that direct expenditure will be below budget for the full year, partly due to staffing levels continue to be below budget. And that's around challenges recruiting to specialist skill sets. However, there is an expectation we'll catch up on delivery over the course of this year. So that was the brief version. There is the dashboard included in the material. Any questions, I'm very happy to take them either at the end of this or offline. I'll pass now to Gary.
Thank you, Peter. Morena tatou and good morning. There are some signs that the economy is cooling as higher interest rates dampen demand. So consumer spending has been falling as electronic card spend transactions decline in October and on top of September as well, even as the population has increased over those months. The labour market continues to ease. Unemployment rose to 3.9% from 3.6% in the September quarter, and similarly Auckland unemployment rose from 4% from 3.6%, and wage growth appears to have peaked and is falling. The CPI, which was released, or the Consumer Price Index, which was released on the 17th of October, shows annual inflation eased to 5.6% in September, down from 6% in June. This means that prices are still increasing, but generally at a slower rate than before. Of course, this result will be welcomed by the Reserve Bank as it reviews the official cash rate next Wednesday on the 29th of November, whereas it's expected to hold the official cash rate at 5.5%. Its forecast implies the OCR remaining at 5.5% as a peak throughout 2024, with cuts coming after annual CPI falls below 3%, which is not forecast until the second part of 2024. Of course, that outlook can change in terms of the peak and the timing of the official cash rate as more economic data emerges. Also of note, subnational population estimates for the year to June 2023 were released by Stats NZ on the 25th of October. The headline result for Auckland is that the population is estimated to be 1.739 million as at the 30th of June this year. That's up from 1.692 million. And that's an increase of 47,000 people, and that's the largest gain for Auckland this century at least, and recovers the estimated loss of 22,000 people over the first 2 years of the pandemic. That growth was driven by net international migration gains following the lifting of the border restrictions in August last year, and has reflected the tightness that we've seen in the labour market and the high demand for labour. While that gain can help ease labour constraints, it also adds to demand for goods and services domestically, including demand for housing, and signs of this are apparent in the upward pressure on rents, including in the Auckland market, although that needs to be seen in the context of rental price growth having been relatively subdued in recent years. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So it's cooling a bit. Councillor Turner, got a question?
Thank you. On page 3 of the report, under capital funding sources, asset sales, we're 51 million behind our yearly actuals. There's a notation there, C, and it says asset sales were 53 million unfavourable to budget due to general downturn in the property market. The full year budget includes the potential sale of the downtown car park building, which settlement is scheduled for the 2025. Could you tell me what the dollar value was of that calculation and just unpick that for me? I don't kind of understand.
Thank you for the question. There's also a further page in there around Eki Panuku's, the same target, but reflected within Eki Panuku's sheet. The $164 million in the budget, so if you reflect back to the decision made by Council in June, that talked about asset recycling. It talked about asset recycling as an important lever for the Council, as it allows capital to be reinvested in assets that support more strategically important activities, and the budget includes an asset recycling target of $70 million for 23-24, so that's part of that number. On top of this, the Council has budgeted for 60 million of returns from some specific asset sale projects in 23-24, and that these include realising value from parking buildings as a part of the off-street parking strategy agreed to as a funding source for the 2019 cost increase to CRL, and the sale of a long-term lease for the Bledisloe building. So in addition to these, the Council also plans to dispose of property assets as part of its property and urban development activities. So that includes Eki Panuku's Unlock and Transform programs, and in the budget we included 34 million of income from this. So that's the aspects of the 164 million asset sales targets within the budget. The underspend to date, or the underachievement, is due to the property market slowdown, and that's the amount of detail that we've been able to produce publicly that wouldn't breach confidentiality.
So
there was also an update provided to the Rev Committee, the Revenue Expenditure and Value Committee this month, on the asset recycling program in quite some detail.
So I just heard you say 34 million. Is that the figure? I just wanted to know how the calculation worked, you know, how did you, so in that 53 million worth of unfavourable, that includes potential sale of the downtown car park and other things, does it?
I believe I've answered that question. The 34 is relation to the property assets as part of the property and urban development activity. So that's more Iki Panuku's unlock and transform. The under delivery is due to a slowdown in the property market. There is the funds from parking buildings within this year's overall sum.
Thank you, although I find it hard to understand. It's out of my league here. When you fill a car up with petrol, you don't tell me how much petrol's at the petrol station. You tell me how much we've put in the car. Thank you.
I'm happy to go back to the budget information and provide that for you in more detail to split it out.
Councillor Fletcher, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a little story about Todd Nile I would like to relate, but I might do that during debate rather than questions.
Given the fact that he shook his head, I think you should do it.
Well, with your indulgence, I'll do it now. I will be very sad to see Todd Nile move on, because some of you may not know that Todd Nile played a really instrumental part in actually supporting the then council from exiting the Jihonglu, the Savoy Investment Britomart proposal. And at that stage, we were told by the lawyers, Simpson and Grierson and everybody else, that we would not be able to exit that particular contract. But with the right communication, and I think Todd was probably the one who was the most diligent in carefully and truthfully explaining what was going on. It built a constituency around support for exiting the earlier Britomart project and embarking on, in a 3-year electoral cycle, a fresh proposal, which was, in terms of consenting and funding, you'll all know how difficult that is. And to that, I really feel that Auckland owes a real debt to Todd Nile, and I, for one, am personally very grateful for his coverage during that time. However, I move on to my questions, because otherwise somebody will say that, it's question time, not speech time. May I say to you, Phil, congratulations. This is the first time formally in a governing body I have addressed you as CEO, and we are fortunate to have somebody of your stature and also the experience that you bring and your intimate understanding of Auckland Council issues and what has gone before. I'm interested in the role that you will play. As you know, I'm very supportive of the Mayor's mandate to the incoming government, that he's got his manifesto, and he's already talked today about the sort of work that we are wanting to see the government support us on in a legislative timetable around a bed tax. But I'm particularly interested in how the interface will take place between the Mayor's office and you as CEO, and with representing all of us on issues that are really important around grade separation, around OPEX, around CRL, and there's a plethora of issues there that we want to see advanced with the incoming government, which everybody tells me will be formed today, who knows. Can you please explain in a little bit of detail how that is evolving? Because I think the Mayor's office is really important, but there are also all of us sitting around the table, and it's important for us all to have the confidence in knowing that what we are going to advocate, hopefully effectively, is going to get some traction. So can you sort of speak to that, please?
Thank you, Councillor. Well, I think just quickly, it starts simply from a position of being on the same page and having worked with the Mayor's office on the manifesto in the first place. So the organisation has absolute clarity about what we're doing. Now, the way I see this, we quite simply need to work in concert. I've got some particular responsibility, as I see it, to socialise the ideas, to influence, to advocate with the central government agencies and elsewhere across the local government sector and with other stakeholders. clearly the Mayor and yourselves, if you like, own the political relationships and the points of influence with ministers. Clearly things are a little bit up in the air still. I note that we may have some clarity later today, or shortly at least, and that will mean that we've got names to positions and an ability to start that dialogue at a political level. So I'm just making sure that we're working in concert with the same messages going down different channels. I had the opportunity to speak last night with 40 council chief executives, and I have quite specifically asked them to get in behind points of Auckland's advocacy, so the wider sector is singing from a similar song sheet. So, you know, again, that's another point of influence that I think I've got to bring to the table in terms of my role.
How will you report back and bring accountability to this work that is being, I'm not talking about the mayoral office, I'm talking about, you know, amongst Auckland council officers, because as you say, it's important everyone's on the same page.
Well, I think through these sessions and through other updates, I do think there is, you know, we're in what is effectively a negotiation with central government to achieve some outcomes. So, you know, how much of that is appropriate for this context is a discussion for us to have. But, you know, I certainly would value other time with the governing body to talk through our progress and our approaches. And can I say, I think everyone around this table has a role to play in that dialogue with government and other stakeholders. So it's important we do have that discussion.
My next question relates to the relationship that you anticipate that you'll have with the CEOs of other CCOs, including the CEO of the Port of Auckland. I mean, these are really important relationships. I know the Mayor at one stage had a view about how that might be structured, but for the moment, can you give us any insight in terms of how we can anticipate officers are going to reinforce those relationships? Because as we saw with Eden Park recently, very often you can have a will to do something, but unless you've got the right leaders and the right relationships in place, they don't work.
Well, that aspects are already underway. So I meet fortnightly with the chief executives of the CCOs, and we have and will continue to talk about these higher order questions, relationship with central government and such. We do not currently involve Roger from Ports of Auckland, you know, but there are discussions through other mechanisms with him. Possibly there is an opportunity to bring them in a little bit more frequently.
I have a particular interest in that. I want to see, and I know Councillor Watson as well, we want to make sure that there's really integration of thinking in order to see the integrated transport plan for Auckland being advanced. Now, that's not just the prerogative of Auckland Transport, that involves staff within Auckland Council. So I just want the assurance that whatever is being done with all of the parties, that we're getting that cohesion in terms of uniformity of policy coming through. If you can just confirm that, that would be great.
I can confirm that we're absolutely on the same page in terms of the importance of that, and that there are those, you know, it probably helps that we've got a good pre-existing relationship with Dean Kimpton, but also at a board level, that is something to foster.
Thank you. And lastly, I mean, how much weighting do you, as the CEO of Auckland Council, place on optimising value from assets?
I put a, if, and you well understand the significance of our asset portfolio in the sense that it drives costs and that we've got to look at it. So I put a high weighting on it. But I'm also very clear that the decisions around those assets are largely for you to make, and for me to support you in the deliberations around them. And clearly there are aspects of that asset portfolio which are contentious, or that there will be a variety of views around the table, and it's important we work through those carefully together.
Thanks, Phil, and good luck with the things as they move forward.
Councillor Sayers, please.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to get an update or summary of, I noticed within the, around the employee benefits for the group, they're a little bit over budget. So just some comment about what areas of the council group are contributing to that overrun of 10 million.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Sayers. It's an interesting question because there's a wee bit of commentary in the water care part of the dashboard that explains some of the degree to which impacts are turning up in actuals that weren't budgeted for in that line item, and that's actually a 10 million shift out of that employee benefit line. So without that, it's effectively on trend as it should be.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, for reminding us this is Todd Niall's last meeting, and I believe it's your first official meeting, so congratulations to you. In regard to Todd Niall, I'd like to support your acknowledgement and that of Councillor Fletcher of Todd's work. I've worked with Todd for some 20 years, and I have to say he has been quite influential on me in one decision, quite an important decision where he did have influence, and he probably doesn't know it, was he interviewed me about the proposed demolition and replacement with Shed 10 with a brand new international cruise ship terminal building, which was agreed between Auckland City Council and the government, and was so popular that public submissions for designs were agreed on and widely supported by all sorts of designs. But when Todd interviewed me, I could see that he was actually quite dismayed that that old building was to be demolished, and it had an impact on me, and I realised that my own misgivings that the plan wasn't right, didn't feel right, was wrong, and the plan needed to be changed. And we did change the plan. That got me into strife with the government of the day, but it felt right, and in the end I think everyone agrees it was the right thing to do. We recycled it. Now, in terms of my question, in terms of asset recycling, following on from Councillor Turner, I hear the Chief Financial Officer use that term frequently when I think he means asset sales. In regard specifically to the downtown car park building, he's used that term. My community supports recycling to transform a thing that has been used into something else but still useful. But in terms of the downtown car park building, demolishing it against a large body of public opinion, demolishing it and carting it away as rubble is not by any means recycling. It's sale and demolition. So in terms of financial reports, I make a request again, let's leave out the politics, leave out the poetry and use frank terms. Thank you.
I don't know what the question was, so you won't have to answer it. Councillor Leone.
Oh, kia ora koutou, kia ora mea. Just coming back to that acknowledgement of Todd Niall, I do want to also acknowledge the mahi that you did when you wrote the piece on local boards and the support or non-support of the Māori wards. I think it was really important piece of mahi that you did in terms of the views of our city. So I just want to acknowledge you there. Just coming back to the questions now, in terms of finances, I just want to ask around the airport shares. I know that I've probably asked a number of times whether that has come off our debt yet, or when we are going to have an idea of when that will be, and also whether we have, whether we can get some information around mana whenua, whether they actually were able to buy any of those shares. Kia ora.
Thank you for the question. Yes, the proceeds of the airport shares came in. They came in during September. That was the reason for the net debt decreasing, as I talked through, and as explained on page 4 of the material in Nexus. It also talks about how that's partially offset by the continuing capital funding requirements that have come through. For further detail, there is the full report that we took through to governing body last month that contains a lot of the information that you're asking for in a lot more detail. We did optimise the sales process to allow mana whenua of Tamaki Makaurau an opportunity to participate. We can't specifically identify whether they took that opportunity because of the way in which that sale progressed. There would be, it's very difficult to see the end purchaser, but there was very much an opportunity to participate given to the mana whenua. With respect to other aspects on it, there is a further report coming back to Audit Committee on the 5th of December as well to ensure that all the processes and compliance aspects were complied with, and also as a learning opportunity to see if there's anything that could have been done better as well.
Kapai, thank you. And just over to Phil, following on from my kōrero earlier around Māori wards, and obviously I was very disappointed that we didn't manage to get Māori wards across the line by 2 votes, but we're aware that there's a possibility that there could be 2 seats given to, well, appointed by the Mayor, possibly mana whenua or IMSB. I just wanted to get some, just some views, obviously, from Phil around if you have any whakaaro or thoughts around that going forward. Kia ora. And I'm aware that it's for 2 speaking positions, not voting.
Yes, so thank you for the question. Yes, so our legislation precludes them being voting. Respectfully, I think it's best if we formalise the advice to you around that rather than have me speak on the fly to it, but there is a potential there, and I think it's important we bring through advice to you as to how it would work, how it could work, in order that we get your direction.
Thank you.
With that, Councillor Watson, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just following up on Councillor Leone, I just want to check that my understanding of the group net debt description is correct, and I say that in the context of course, the debt and interest payments were very prominent considerations in the annual plan, just a number of months ago. So, according to the figures I was given, around about the time of the vote on the airport shares, May, June of this year, the net debt was about 12.056 billion. The proceeds of the sale were 833 million. The net debt end of October is now 12.065 billion, with the 833 million being used in the interim to pay down that debt. So essentially the debt's at the same level it was 5 months ago, even after the 833 million has been used to pay it down, and that's because we've raised borrowings in the interim to do other works. Is that in broad terms the correct understanding?
Through you, Chair. So the key aspects here, as I described earlier with regard to that movement and how it's decreased to the end of October. But the key aspect that means that it is not the full 833 that's turning up is that we have a continuing dependency on debt as a funding source as we invest. We continue to invest quite heavily in infrastructure. The investor pack that we produce talks about our investment in transport infrastructure, Auckland Council assets, water infrastructure, and it approaches $2.5 to $3 billion a year. So until we're fully funding depreciation, one of our key funding sources is actually a requirement for a change in debt. That change in debt continues irrespective of the need or the partial sale down of the airport shares. What has occurred with the sale of the airport shares is that if we hadn't sold them, our debt would be $833 million higher.
Okay, so the simple question was, 4 months on, our debt level is at the same level it was when we voted to sell the airport shares. Is that yes or no?
The question I've answered more fully around the rationale for what you see as the debt position now, which is the continuing dependency on debt as a funding source to continue to fund the investment in infrastructure as approved by council.
Okay, I won't ask it a third time. As far as well, it's not rude. I asked for a simple answer. I didn't get it. Well, that's rich coming from you.
Point of order.
So I'll go to the next question, and again it goes to the context of that annual plan budget in terms of the interest costs we're paying now. So that's identified, I think, at per annum of $528 million, at 1.44 million a day. What is the projected interest cost then for the next year after having paid down the debt?
I think we're reaching outside of the scope of the October reports. What I would refer to is the interest cost, which I saw somewhere as being a weighted average now of about 4.67%. As we work through the long-term plan, we will obviously be refreshing all of our weighted average cost of those interest costs going forward. It's fair to say that we are well hedged in this space. About 80% of our debt is fixed rather than floating, so that makes a difference. There's also, within the report, you'll see the aspects we have pulled through in terms of finance costs and also finance revenue and the expectation for that. But I have not, within this October performance report, taken on a view of what the interest costs might be next year. That will be a decision for council.
Thank you.
Okay, I think he said that had we not sold those, our debt would be $846 million more than it is. And I also note that the share value of those shares has dropped by 404 of the ones we got. Has dropped by $404 million since we could have sold them. So all in all, no one came at that very cleverly. Councillor, Deputy Mayor Simpson, please.
I don't have a question, Your Worship, I have a comment. So when you finish questions, I'll do a comment.
Okay, is there a difference? Half the questions were about a reporter who's leaving. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the report. I just wanted to ask about the 19 million in the fees and user charges that were favourable to budget. And wondering, because, part of it's coming from the building consents, and building consents consistently, we have more revenue than expenditure in that area. Is it reasonable to expect that with more development that we're seeing, that this could be an ongoing favourable figure that we see in our reports?
Thank you, Councillor. That is a great question, and let me answer it. To the best of my knowledge, as we've looked at that trend line itself, we expect it to outperform budget, but not to the same extent that it has for this period of the year, due to some other regulations coming in and what we're seeing in terms of the consents. So yes, we expect it to outperform for the year, but we will see the degree of outperformance reduce throughout the year. That's our current estimate. We are going to dig into that more deeply for the next formal forecasting round, which we'll do at the next quarter and bring back to our governing body. So it's a good call out, and we're watching it with interest as well.
Okay, thank you. And then I just also had, it's not really a question, but to our CEO, congratulations. And then also for Parole to express my congratulations on what they've achieved in changing people's behaviour and doing something that we're trying to do in other areas of council with transport, and they've come through and done it with getting people to use their food bins and change their behaviour and making people see that they can make a difference themselves with these pink bags and this little plastic bin. So I just wanted to say they've done a great job and to pass that on, and then also to acknowledge Todd Nile as well, and for what you do to take what we do around this table out to the public so they have a better understanding of the decisions that affect their daily lives. So thank you and all the best.
Thank you for the comments. Excuse me, Your Worship. I just wanted to make one point. I'm contemplating developers, people at home doing building work and what have you. I hope it's really clear that when we're talking about fees and charges in that space, it's not a case of council profiteering by overcharging here. Actually, what it means is that there's a contribution being made to the organisational overheads that wouldn't otherwise be accounted for. Okay, just important point here in terms of what it means for the people actually paying the bills.
Yeah, thank you, Phil, because these are cost recovery charges, not anything else.
Councillor Hills, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This comes up quite a lot around capital funding, and it is what we approved, but a bunch of our funding is obviously depreciation funded from cash reserves. Some of it's DC funded, but I think it's about $1 billion a year we've chosen to borrow to fund capital. If we didn't fund that through debt and funded it through rates, my understanding is we'd have to put up rates about 50% each year. Is that correct? 50?
If I do the math quite quickly without reference to anything else, and we take rates revenue as about 2 billion and capex of 1 billion, then you'd have to increase the rates to 3 billion to cover that off. So 50% is, close or thereabouts. That's very rude, very rough.
Yeah, so our choice we've made as a council to almost triple our capital over the last 6 or 7 years is to use debt because it smooths it over a longer period, isn't it? Rather than charging 50% increase in rates each year.
There's a couple of aspects in that. One is the use of debt as an appropriate mechanism to spread the cost of that asset over the users of the life of that asset, the term intergenerational equity, so that you're not overcharging currently. However, there's also the fully funding of depreciation aspect as well, where if you don't fully fund depreciation, you are funding debt for some of the capital that you would be funding by OPEX, and as such that debt is falling on future generations. So yes, those choices are very important as part of your past plans and indeed the one coming up.
And by paying off 800 or so, we're technically saving $40-something million of interest costs projected, even though we're borrowing more for that capital we already had planned to do.
Yes, I'd probably refer that wider discussion in terms of benefit to the paper from last month as the other aspect for that particular financial investment was the returns from it as well, which also have to be taken into account around the dividends.
Sure. And so the debt level we're at hasn't been an accident. It's been council's decisions to invest in capital more than we used to because of the capital deficit in this, infrastructure deficit in the city.
Okay, well, is there a mover and a seconder for to receive this? Two ladies to my left. Okay, I'll ask the staff to leave the table, and there is some debate. I know the Deputy Mayor wishes to speak on this.
No, Your Worship, I just wanted to, I didn't have a question for either the Chief Financial Officer or our new Chief Executive, other than to say congratulations. But I did want to acknowledge Todd. You know, nearly 50 years in the media is an outstanding service to Auckland. Love, loathe or tolerate them, the media play a really important part in talking to Aucklanders about what happens around this table and communicating the decisions that we make in different ways. Todd, your tenure has spanned not just the print, but radio as well. It's gone way back as far as Auckland being a number of boroughs. And I just want to say thank you for that long and fine service. I'm not going to tell any stories about you because they probably would embarrass both of us. But I do want to say, and I think it's important, that everybody around this table acknowledges the amazing role that you have played as a media personality in Auckland. You care about our city, and that's why you've probably stayed the distance. And because you care, you've done a fine job. Thank you. I'd put a resolution up, except that it's not really Chief Executive or Chief Financial Officer update.
There's a chance you might get back to what we're discussing here with Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, you're actually right, Mayor, although I do feel sorry for having to follow such a fantastic acknowledgement. I have something about the CEO to talk about here. Yeah, look, I just wanted to really briefly acknowledge you, Phil, and congratulate you for your step up to the gig on a permanent basis. And, you know, as we've kind of discussed throughout, just encourage continual work to promote initiatives for our public workers to be really proud of their jobs and really proud of their city. I think that's a really key benchmark for obviously for yourself and your role, ourselves, and also the whole city. So yeah, just congratulations, and just really encourage you to do that. And some of those signs around discussing professional development and helping workers out that are doing it tough or actually looking for opportunities as well. That's really encouraging, and I'm really excited by that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and encourage you to keep going. Thank you.
Okay, I'd just like to acknowledge that only 1 year after I started, we've got these lovely pictures up around the room here. And if you come in here, just as I wanted to, it no longer, you actually get to know that you're in Auckland, as opposed to if you didn't know, you might have thought you were in East Berlin. But I think they're marvellous. And persistence pays off. So thanks for that, Phil. The floggings will continue until morale improves, but and we get the next things up. But it is good to see that. Bad luck, Todd. You only get 1 day with it looking nice, but that's how it goes. All right. All those in favour of receiving the comprehensive reports from the Chief Executive and his Group Chief Financial Officer, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Thank you very much for going to the category, item 9, the category 2P property remediation scheme. This has been through the political